Science, where we keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much for joining me. So let's go ahead and get into. Actually, no, let me tell you why I'm like who I am and why I'm talking. Right, so I am an expert in catch wrestling. I have many years of experience with the highest level, most authentic coaches in the world. So that means with the original British lineage and the American lineage of catch wrestling. So that's basically why I'm talking, because of the experience I have with the most authentic sources for catch as catch can wrestling in the world. And so I kind of want to talk about like one thing that I've experienced a lot, or that I've seen a lot, and I've actually written about this in the past about the Olympics and freestyle wrestling in particular, and why the Olympics highlight the need for a return to catch as catch can wrestling. Because what's happened over the years, for those of you who don't know, and I know that many people, even who are involved with catch wrestling, they did not know this, that amateur or that freestyle wrestling used to be called amateur catch as catch can wrestling. So when the modern Olympics started again, they took the two most popular grappling styles of the time, so a French style, and they renamed the French wrestling. They renamed French wrestling into Greco-Roman, and then they took the other most popular style, catch as catch can wrestling, and they just called it amateur catch as catch can. And so, uh, but instantly though they barred all the submission holds and stuff like that. So that's why um, later on, after they changed the name of amateur catch as catch can to a much simpler one, freestyle. That's why freestyle um, never had submission holds and stuff like that. But over the years, more and more things got added, like the point system, and also really short time limits, because there were matches that went on for a very long time. And so what we see nowadays is the modern version of freestyle has 2 3 minute rounds, or basically like the way I kind of see it is like one 1 6 minute match, and they divide it into 2 3 minute halves. And it so like that already kind of negates a lot of the original versions of, or the original strategies of catch wrestling. So since catch wrestling did not have time limits in the past, then you can employ strategies where you can like tire your opponent out, and so then it'll make it much easier for you to then counterattack once they're tired or once they're fatigued, right? So that is one of the things that is kind of going on. But then the other thing that I kind of want to mention, besides like submissions being really exciting, and what we see with the threat of a submission hold, is like, I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like stuff like, or like grappling styles that have submission holds, like jujitsu. The whole world has traditional wrestling styles or grappling styles, and they're really fun to watch. Um, but it seems like around the world, jujitsu is becoming very, very popular. Say especially people who do MMA and stuff like that. It's kind of an integral part of uh, their study, right? Like their training. Um, so I I don't necessarily think, and I actually, if anybody, feel free to comment if you're watching this live. Feel free to give me your 2 cents or whatever, because wrestling, at least the amateur wrestling that we've seen in the Olympics, it almost got cut. Actually, it did get cut, but because so many people protested, then it was reinstated. But truly, the way it is nowadays, it's become, we say, like speed wrestling, right? So whoever can rack up the most points. So basically, especially what you see. Oh, I can put it this way: like when you see like freestyle wrestling in particular, especially like men's freestyle, a lot of it is like double leg after double leg, or double leg attempt after double leg attempt, to try to get around back, try to get the 2 point takedown. Um, and that's not exactly the way, well, that is just not the way catch wrestling was. And but the thing is, what we see now is that a lot of people and even the announcers in the Olympics, this was like almost every session of freestyle when once the broadcast started. I was watching the feed that had the British commentator, and like every time they're like, welcome to the oldest sport in the world, and um, but so they were trying to still kind of create that sense that was the original intention of like renaming French wrestling to Greco-Roman, where they try to recall or make you think that this what you're seeing now is what the Greeks and Romans did when it wasn't, right? And but the thing is, because it does take a lot of skill in order to win a gold medal in freestyle or Greco. Um, what we're having is a lot of people, and like a lot of people with big egos also, where they're doing these amateur styles of wrestling. And granted, they could be excellent wrestlers just by themselves, just by doing freestyle and Greco, but it is not complete, and it's not complete enough, in my opinion, right? So especially when you are used to having such a short time limit, then that can in turn make it where you could gas out really quick in a longer match where there is no break at the 3 minute mark, right? And then if you're not cognizant of the submission holds, then you're vulnerable to that when you try to compete in that kind of rule set, like a no-gi rule set. And what are we seeing when amateur wrestlers like what Tony Ramos and many others, once they've tried to do a no-gi match, they get submitted, and some of them get submitted very, very fast. All right, so but the thing is like going up into that match, these people, the amateur wrestlers, they had these huge egos, and um, it was almost like that was their blind spot, where it's like so they were so puffed up, right? The ego was so large based off of their ability to do amateur wrestling so well, that they had this blind spot where like they didn't they were so it's like the it's like the whole thing where it's like the unknown unknowns, where it's like the where it's like they didn't know what what they didn't know, right? That's the whole thing, where it's like there's this big world of submissions, even in catch wrestling, right? And but a lot of times these amateur wrestlers are even unaware of their history, and so that's another reason why I mentioned like the Olympics really highlight the need for catch wrestling, because a lot of these amateur wrestlers have forgotten the history, right? So they've forgotten that their style came from an older style that had submission holds as well, and was actually much more exciting to watch. Even though some of the matches could last a long time, they filled up Madison Square Garden. You're not filling up Madison Square Garden with amateur wrestling. You can get a lot of people depending on the country and stuff like that, but it's not as practiced as it used to be, and we're seeing potentially like the waning of support, because say like if someone were to watch any kind of amateur wrestling contest nowadays, so take example the Olympics and freestyle, they might just be clueless as to what's going on, right? Because even if the score is tied at the end of the 6 minutes, then there's all this different criteria that determines the winner. So there is no kind of like there's no sudden death type thing. There's it's just they have different rules as like who scored latest, or who, if the score is tied, but whoever scored the 4 point takedown or whatever, then they will win or whatever. So a lot of the stuff truly isn't very fair, and it's almost like soul crushing to lose by at 1 point or something, like if you were the last, or like if you got pushed out of the circle, right? So that's kind of it's almost bizarre and almost anti the spirit of wrestling when you look at those types of rules, and when you see people losing by these types of things, where it's like if they lost by pin, that's kind of one thing, right? But then if they're losing by these point criterias, then it's almost like needless mental anguish for the competitor, right? So not to say all their hard work was in vain, or that they didn't learn anything of value from all their years of training and freestyle and Greco. But there's a larger world out there, and it's like there's this larger world out there that's kind of like waiting for them, because not everyone is able to make the US team. So there's this larger pool of wrestlers who, once they graduate college, especially like the United States, there's not much for them besides like maybe trying to do jujitsu or MMA. So um, these are some of the main points where I'm trying to explain to you that like there is a definite need for catch wrestling, because not only is there not much for people who are interested in amateur wrestling once they graduate university, but there's more to wrestling than amateur wrestling, the folk style or freestyle or Greco styles, which all have good aspects about them, because they all have catch wrestling principles in them, right? So there's a lot good. There's a lot of good things, or a lot of good principles to them, but there's not enough, right? So like we can kind of put it this way, where it's like a lot of people considered catch wrestling to be more of like a martial art, right? So you can use it for sport, or you can use it for self-defense, right? It was also taught in our military academies, so not only United States but in England and all that. So there's these different levels, right, of almost like a to make a complete pie, right? So like, there's all these different aspects. So like we talk about different aspects of health or physical fitness, where it's like you have the flexibility training that needs to be there. You need the strength and conditioning, right? You need the sport specific training and stuff like that. Same thing with like martial arts or wrestling styles or grappling styles. And I think that's why we're seeing grappling styles. So it's like no gi. Like tonight, even there's going to be a no gi event, like on Flow Grappling, right? So we're on Flow, right? So and then I know some people who are going to be competing in no gi tonight. So um, it's like we're not seeing the frequency of events for amateur wrestling like we're seeing with like nogi. Like nogi is like really growing right now. So it's providing like places for people to go, especially grapplers who or wrestlers who did amateur styles up until college, and then after they graduate, maybe they don't want to go to the Olympics, or maybe they didn't qualify or whatever. So nogi is actually waiting for them, right? But something that would be even more exciting, because it's more fast paced, really, is catch wrestling, because of the pin, right? So you can't stay on your back for too long, right? Or you get pinned. You can't, and and the other thing is like points. So earlier I was talking about points, where it's like it's soul crushing to lose by a point or whatever, where it's like truly like if someone pushed you out of the ring and that put them over by 1 point, that's not real dominance, right? Um, because I mean, some people might argue where it's like, well, you should have stayed towards the middle or whatever, but like seriously, that's not real dominance, right? Like holding someone down, right? Riding them. So riding their legs, keeping them down, keeping them flat. And the other thing too is like some of the things that they give points for in freestyle in particular is like rolling the person over several times, where you can win the match. Like once you've passed a 10-point difference in your score, that again doesn't necessarily show that you can submit them or even pin them, because you're just rolling them over and over. So there's a lot to be desired, and I think that that's why a lot of people don't even watch. Right. So I don't know how well viewed um, the Olympics are in general. It seems like this year, like even the Olympics in general weren't viewed as much as previous years. I think that's also just waning in general. But um, so those are kind of like my main points, where it's like points are like almost like anti wrestling, right? And also the short time limits. Um, Also, like the forgetting of the roots of wrestling, and especially freestyle, since it came from catch as catch can, and freestyle used to be called amateur catch as catch can. All these things are very, very important, and should not be forgotten, right? Catch as catch can was so popular that, again, like when they started doing the Olympics again, they included that as one of the two main wrestling styles of the day, like the two main most popular styles of that day, um, were included, right? So nowadays, there are actually one of the sessions of the freestyle wrestling, one of the British announcer, maybe because he was British, he made sure to talk about catch as catch can wrestling. Of course, he was not an expert, but at least he talked about how, like, oh, freestyle came from catch as catch can, and so at least there was some mention here and there, but there's not a thorough understanding of it. And I think that's ultimately a shame, because then what we have, or I've seen a lot of people commenting, not necessarily negatively, but you see people commenting where it's like their understanding of wrestling, or what they believe to be real wrestling, is these styles that were that came from catch as catch can, right? But that these styles have been somewhat neutered, right? Where it's like I said, point system, short time limits, no submission holds, et cetera, et cetera. So then nowadays, since people don't know the history, then they're thinking these almost like distorted thoughts of what real wrestling is. So I've seen these types of comments like all over the internet. And so, like I was talking earlier about the egos, where it's like then you get these people who, like, they don't know the history, they don't know that the style that they love so much, as fun as it may be for them, uh, is almost like an incomplete version, right? Um, and so then they think that, oh, that what they like is real wrestling, which it is a real wrestling style, but again, it is like not the, it is like the, we can think of like the, what it literally is, the amateur version of the professional style that their amateur version came from. And if they only had that appreciation for the original professional version, I think the egos might be calmed down a little bit, because again, we're seeing these great amateur wrestlers just getting submitted so quickly in no gi, so that is a problem. All right, so I think I've kind of made the main points. Feel free to comment. Whatever you have, you can you can let me know. Even if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. Because I kind of want to have like this more open dialogue to let you guys know, kind of like the catch wrestling perspective, and kind of have more of a common ground, because I think a lot of people even nowadays have a little bit more of the jiu-jitsu background, so they're usually approaching catch wrestling from a jiu-jitsu perspective. So we all have different backgrounds, so we can go ahead and talk about it. All right, so actually we have a few comments. So Taquero Man 91, let's see what you have to say. Any tips to improve your mount to avoid being swept while in high mount? Um, just don't, I usually don't stay in mount. Um, yeah, like, and in catch wrestling, if you've mounted them and it's longer than 2 seconds, then you've won. Um, so if you're doing no-gi, then like, what are you gonna do in mount? What are you gonna do in mount, homie? You got to set up something, right? So you got to set up your submission. A lot of times you can do arm bars or triangles from a high mount or whatever. Quite often, if I'm rolling in nogi, I don't stay in mount. I set up something else from side control. Okay, Taquero Man. Favorite grips in catch wrestling? S grip. That's it. Right? That's like the grip, even over the gable grip or whatever. Taquero Man 91. Favorite Olympic performance so far? Actually, I want to do a video about it. That's a good question. One of the things actually I did want to mention or I want to talk about is um, like a lot of the women's matches. I think displayed a little bit more of a variety of techniques than a lot of the men's matches, where it's just like single or double leg attempt after double leg attempt. So I wanted to do. I did one video already this week with freestyle wrestling champ from Hungary. She was also or Hungary. She was also European judo black belt champion. Um, Francesca. So she, if you look at our YouTube channel, check out the video. We kind of do an homage to the way Adeline Gray does her single leg. Um, we know the thing. So yeah, when an amateur wrestler commented like, "Oh, isn't that exactly the same?" But is pretty close to the same. It's just the video that I used um, of Adeline doing the takedown was one of many times that she did this takedown. So even when she does it, it's always a little bit different. Her opponent reacts a little differently. Um, so that's another thing about wrestling. It should be more principle based as opposed to like, oh, you do the technique this way, this way, this way, and someone is supposed to react a certain way. It's just not true. So we're even in the Olympics, we're seeing in the women's division, or all the divisions, right? You're getting people from coming from different countries, different backgrounds and stuff. So they're not always going to um, react the way you expect them to. So in our video, we just showed kind of a typical follow through. So don't get too upset, right? So we're just showing you the main principles, right? Yeah, because I think that's so weird when someone's like, well, it wasn't exactly like the video, but it's like in the video would have been really long if I because I did have a video of Adeline doing the same takedown because I think that's like her go-to single leg because she did it or she attempted it in virtually every match she had. So if I were to put them all in one video, I think you guys would get bored. So I just put one, right? So anyway, I'm not too worried about criticism. I just think it's funny that like someone had to comment like, wasn't that exactly whatever? Um, but yeah, I think the women's division, and so besides Adeline Gray, there was Bulgarian woman Nikolova in a different weight division. I think it was the same weight division as Helen Maroulis. Um, she did a really cool takedown where like it was a counter attack to a single leg attempt. Her opponent got the single leg, lifted the leg up, and she started to defend kind of in a more of a orthodox or kind of like a conventional way of defending. But then she turned it into a takedown, which would be a variation of a scissor takedown that in grappling, a lot of people consider the scissor takedown to be like a potentially dangerous or like I think there's even some videos on YouTube where they talk about the most dangerous takedown in grappling. And so because you can like when you scissor your leg around the other person's leg, there's a potential of putting a lot of pressure on their knee or their ankle, and so sometimes people get their ankles broken like when someone's doing the scissor takedown. So the Bulgarian woman Nikolova, she did a variation of it where she was able to get a takedown, and ultimately it led to a pin. So I definitely want to do a video about that so you guys can see this other type of takedown that can give you guys a maybe a safer version of the scissor takedown where you don't actually have to scissor the leg, but you're kind of a half scissor and you can still pull the person down, and you can go for a leg lock or a pin, which is why I wanted to highlight that one. But like a lot of the men's matches I was seeing, it's like a lot of it is just like single leg attempt after single leg attempt. So maybe I should bring you more of the women's thing. So even there's some other women's matches that had a variety of techniques. So I think we'll probably show those more than the men's. All right. Okay. You say Edgar or Eo Agar? You should get in contact with HEMA YouTubers. Okay. Sounds good. They should get in contact with me, right? Taquero Man 91. Did you watch the Pitbull versus McKee match? No, I didn't watch it. I think McKee won, right? Or something. I didn't watch. Uh, any good tips to break up hand grips in person, uh, on person, hips, waist? Hmm. Um, I would have to make a video about it, really. But try to, basically, in order to stop a lot of people's attacks. Actually, there was a good match, good women's freestyle match. It was one of Adeline Gray's match. She was able to use her go-to takedown on. I think it was for. I think it was in the semifinal, and the opponent's name was Adair, and so she got taken down, but instantly she got wrist control on Adeline, and that really prevented Adeline Gray from getting a leg lace and rolling her over. So she actually had to just kind of give up because, like, once Adair got taken down, she reached for the wrist, and she just kept it by her side, so that really prevented someone from, or Adeline in particular, to, follow through with like a leg lace or any kind of gut wrench or anything like that. So if you're talking about breaking up the hand grips in person, without being able to show you on this live stream, I can just say, like, try to prevent it, right? Try to prevent these things by getting wrist control first, all right? Then you can have a lot more control over the counters or the counter attacks on a person. All right. Thoughts on the success of wrestling in, let me see, success of wrestling in the region, in the Caucasus region of Russia, Ukraine, Georgia, etc. Do you think they train differently? Yeah, potentially. Um, Yeah, but I mean, again, like, I think because of, like, say, like the point system, short time limits, all these things, it's not like they win all the gold medals and stuff, because there's so many. Basically, you have to be perfect because of the point system, really. So you have to be perfect and not give up any of these points, or you have to make sure that you don't get pushed out of the ring, right? So you don't give up that 1 point that can lose you the match and stuff like that. So um, they're good and they're everyone was successful, but it's not like the Americans or the Team USA isn't winning gold medals either. So everyone's training very hard. Um, I think there's some. I think I think in the United States maybe people don't care as much about Greco, so that's why you don't really see the Americans, really dominating that. You see that, like, even Francesca, the woman in our video this week, she was even saying, like, it's Greco and stuff is really more popular, kind of like Eastern Europe and all that. Anyway, I think so. Then the popularity kind of dictates, like, how many people are in that sport, and so then you can have a deeper pool of talent that can perform well. Mark R. Taquero Man, they train Olympic styles in Europe from day one in amateur. In the States, they do folk and college styles. Maybe that's why. Mark has a good point as well. And this is actually a big debate that's going on in the United States, where even though Americans are winning medals in freestyle, a lot of people who are fans of amateur wrestling, they are calling for the elimination of folk style wrestling. So that's for those of you who don't know these little differences, or these different names of styles. So in the United States only, right, the style that is practiced, like say if you go to like a regular public school in the United States, in our public school systems, um, if you were to do wrestling, or if you were to take a wrestling class or after school wrestling club, chances are it's what we call folk style wrestling. Sometimes people call it like scholastic wrestling. Um, but this is the style of wrestling that you would do. And then the style of wrestling that we do in the NCAA, so in the collegiate level, it is this folk style wrestling. The rules change a little bit between high school and university, but needless to say, neither of these versions are freestyle wrestling. So that is one of the arguments that people are bringing up as to why we should eliminate freestyle. Sorry, why we should eliminate folk style and only focus on freestyle wrestling, so that our people, if they want to compete in the Olympics, instead of like say wasting all these years doing folk style, then they would have built up their freestyle skills if we just eliminate folk style. So maybe we could win all the gold medals or whatever. So this is an argument, and it actually I think it's valid. Where it's like, if that is your goal to only get gold medals at the Olympics, sure. And so since our country, the United States, is the only country that does that, that's why you'll see these rivalries between, say like countries that are strong in wrestling, like Iran or Russia, or even like India has a lot of good uh, competitors as well. And women's divisions, they also have other good wrestling countries for women, like Mongolia and Japan. Um, so you're seeing these other countries that only do freestyle, and then this is kind of one of the things they even talked about that I saw when I was in China, but they also talked about it in the Olympic broadcast, where I believe it was one competitor from, it could have been Iran, but they were talking about a certain region where there was a traditional grappling style, and over the years, because of the presence of freestyle, that the traditional style of this certain region, and it wasn't uh, um, like a wrestling style whose name I remember, right? So sorry about that, but it seemed like a more obscure style that was like in like this, the small region. And they said that this small style, it changed its rules to basically be like freestyle, because of that, where it's like, say like, unlike in the United States where we have, you can think our folk style wrestling could be just that, like folk style, like a of the people kind of style, right? Um, but because of the presence of the Olympics and freestyle, then it would be like if we just got rid of folk style and changed all the rules to whatever the freestyle rules are, and that can help make more like a larger pool of competitors that can then go compete at the Olympics as well. So they can compete at the village level or the county level or whatever, and then you can get talent from there. So this also is something that I saw when I was in China. There's in Yunnan province, there's the indigenous people there. They're called the E people, and so then they have their own type of wrestling, which is really similar to freestyle. So you're actually getting them kind of using freestyle rules a lot as well. But they also are sending like really good competitors to, like, the regional level. So then like the province level, then some of them later on go to the national level, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the thought behind like it just eliminating folk style from the United States, which again would kind of be sad, right? Because I think folk style is a little bit closer to catch wrestling rules, than freestyle is. And so both of these styles came from catch wrestling, but just because they have different people running them, and we that's why you see these subtle differences between freestyle and folk style, even though they have the same parent, right? The same parent style, which is catch wrestling. Oh, Mark, thank you. So this is exactly well explained. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's not like I don't like these styles. I appreciate all of these grappling styles, but again, I'm here talking about catch wrestling, and I would appreciate it if these people practicing these other amateur styles that came from catch wrestling, if they had the same appreciation of catch wrestling as I do of these amateur styles, right? Taquero man, do you notice that your grappling can be negated by grapplers with certain body style? I don't kind of I don't understand that too much. But you mean like different body types? Yeah, you always have to modify things according to body types. If we talk about some, say if you have a match between someone who's like a really good amateur wrestler and you're a catch wrestler, right? Then chances are you're going to want to be using your submission holds against that person, right? Instead of, so you can kind of think simply. And I know even my good friend John Strickland on the East Coast, he says something along these lines, where it's like you want to like grapple a wrestler, or you want to use your submission holds to counter a wrestler who is going to want to try to put you on your back, right? Um, and if you go up against like a jiu-jitsu person, a grappler, then you could be using your wrestling against them to try to get on top. You try to pin them and set up your submission. So that can be kind of a way to think about it. Yeah, they're different body types as well. So yeah, it's a taquero man. Body types, that's what you're talking about, right? Um, maybe you can be going for different things. I mean, if someone's like huge and like really big and strong, then yeah, maybe you can try going for like basically if they're big and strong, like they say like their whole arm isolated, using your whole body against their one arm will show that your body is stronger than their one arm. So that's kind of one of the things you want to try to do, where it's like you don't necessarily try to hold them down or try to throw them around by their body, by their core, like like their torso. But you see if you can't isolate a limb that you can manipulate with using your body strength. So that's one way you can also think about that, where it's like, say if you go up against some huge, like the Rock, or some giant person who's like really muscular or whatever, you don't think about controlling that entire person, but think about controlling a smaller portion, right? So it's kind of like the argument with what for leg locks and all that, where it's like, oh, you whatever, the people were talking about passing guard and whatever, but they were ignoring a tiny percentage of the body or something along those lines. So you can think about that, where it's like you see a giant person, don't necessarily be intimidated, but see if you can't get where you can control a smaller percentage of their body, right? And then you can try for your submission hold, or you can use your figure four, so like your double wrist lock position or your key lock position, to pin them or to submit them, right? Because in catch wrestling, these wrestling holds can potentially turn into submission holds as well. So hopefully that answers your question. So don't be intimidated. Quite often, it's like even when I did kickboxing tournaments, I noticed this more in kickboxing. So I think for some reason there are some people who are really trying to intimidate others, and so there'd be guys at these kickboxing tournaments where they were like, trying to jump around and just look really intimidating, and kind of just show like, I don't know, just how scary they were. But like I've seen like guys like that at the beginning of the tournament, and then those same guys at the end where they were like knocked out or really injured, or like so quite often the look, even as intimidating as it might be at first, don't let it get to you, right? I mean, I know there's a lot more to winning than just like how you look or even just the physical fitness. You have to have the skill there, and also once you have the skill, like the techniques, you have to have the mentality, right? So you have to be brave enough to compete, but then once you're competing, you have to have the knowledge and the experience, so that you can counter certain moves, counter certain attacks, or even if the counter attacks you might not have seen before. So you have to know, like, you know and understand when to use certain principles, right? So then that in turn can help you to implement different techniques. So whether it be like a pinning technique or a submission hold, or different types of wrestling holds, that is where like kind of like the discernment comes in. So there's a lot that goes into like winning a match, more than just like how big your muscles are, right? All right. Any more questions or comments? Feel free to comment. Hopefully I made my point where I enjoy watching these amateur styles. I appreciate them. I wish they appreciated catch wrestling back. I think it would make them more successful. I think it would make amateur wrestlers more successful in like no-gi matches, or submission grappling matches, if they incorporated catch wrestling over even doing some kind of no-gi jiu-jitsu. So I wish they shared this appreciation of catch wrestling. So that's ultimately my point, where it's like, uh, like, don't necessarily have the biggest ego if you only do amateur wrestling, because we've seen in the past few years, especially before COVID, there was like um, quite a few matches where it's like these big time U.S. amateur wrestlers just getting submitted in no gi. So um, we even had like a really good NCAA wrestler compete in jiu-jitsu tournament, and yeah, still didn't like, he could dominate, like NCAA champion Ed Ruth, right? And I think he didn't win like these jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff. Um, so that wasn't like as large a scale as like some of uh, these other matches, like it was a Nikki Ryan versus Ramos, right? So, but yeah, they still happen. There's like quite a bit of that happening. Yes. So Mark's comment. Let me go ahead and read it for you here. So, a good catch guy, um, legitimate shooter, should beat a pure wrestler eventually. Pure wrestlers used to fear the shooter. That's correct. And so then this is why they talked about these differences, and they actually kind of put it more simply, where it's like, you're amateur or you're pro. So once you go pro, you have to be learning these other holds, right? And so actually, I know a lot of stories from Dick Cardinal, who was a really good catch wrestler, but also did like pro. He also did the different AT shows and stuff, and that's kind of what he would talk about, where it's like you have these really good amateur wrestlers coming at you, so you had to use their attacks and then try to counter them. And ideally, if you can submit them really quickly, then yeah, you can, like, you would win, right? So, and that used to be the way people saw these differences, right? And so quite simply, it was put as like pro or amateur, right? So it's like the pro version was the more dangerous, more should have been more the exciting way, um, and then the amateur was a safer way, right? So the amateur version still can teach you a lot of great fundamentals, but once you do pro, then the level of danger goes up, and so you have all these other like pain compliance moves and submission holds and stuff that you have to be concerned about, right? But yeah, it seemed to be more universally understood back in the day, right? Like, so early 1900s. Taquero Man, thoughts on learning grappling online? Is a partner required to complete the CWA Academy course? No, a partner isn't required, but it's helpful. We have some people training on like the training dummies and stuff, but then so it's kind of like the like they'll train on a training dummy primarily, but then when they have a partner, then they'll train with a partner. But ultimately, it's about like say like learning the techniques, learning the principles, and then learning when and how to apply when you're grappling. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully I was able to answer your guys' questions. So Takeru Man and Mark are, thank you for commenting and asking questions and stuff. But yeah, I think you guys are understanding a lot. So hopefully, you can understand my point of view, and hopefully everyone can appreciate catch wrestling more. And yeah, yeah. So I think maybe we've been talking for a little while. We've been having a nice chat, so we'll go ahead and end it here. But Takeru Man mentioned the CWA Academy. So that's if you go to our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com, you can join. If there's no catch wrestling school nearby you, you can do our online courses and build up from there. We also have other courses up there on our website. If you want to just do individual courses, we have them up on our website as well. We also have memberships to our YouTube channel. So if you guys want to see some of the videos that we have behind that paywall, there's a bunch of cool videos up there, and we want to try to add more. Um, so feel free to join there. Or we also have like a small membership to our YouTube channel. It's like $2 a month or something if you want to support us and what we're doing. Because hopefully we can get some events going on now that it's kind of crazy here in Los Angeles right now because a lot of people got vaccinated real quick, and so then the numbers died down of COVID. But um, I think that all that stalled, and so then now we're having a little bit of a resurgence of the new COVID variants, and I don't know how things are gonna be going with some restrictions and stuff. Um, so yeah, we'll see. So hopefully, or if we keep everything kind of small or whatever with no audience, I think that should be fine. All right. So thank you very much for watching or listening and supporting. All right. So together we'll keep real wrestling alive.